Hello, hello, everyone. We are live. You might notice not from our normal environs. We are live from Icarus Fest. Actually, Michael's just downstairs.
Mm-hmm.
And right across the street is the Williams Center in Rutherford, New Jersey, where the Icarus Fest will be taking place starting right now through the weekend. This is the event. This is the event of the year. We have the speakers have come in from all over the country. We have, in my view, the very best journalists out there, and we have some of the best filmmakers. We're showing classic films that speak to our current condition or that have been canceled. We have an incredible lineup of comedians on Friday night for comedy night, headlined by Kurt Metzger and Lou Perez, Rich Voss, Danny Polishuk, and
Danny Natterman.
And Dan Natterman, yes.
Mm-hmm.
An amazing lineup of top-notch comedians, and everyone's a fan of Kurt Metzger around here. So this is pretty exciting for us and for unregistered fans. We have panel discussions at the highest level on the Ukraine war, on American foreign policy, on geopolitics, on COVID, on the pandemic, on the lockdowns, on state surveillance, on censorship. We will be discussing Gone with the Wind on Sunday with the great Jack Mason of the Perfume Nationalist podcast, whose analysis of that movie changed my whole life. And I think if you come to this and watch Jack give his critique of this movie and what it means, it will change your life too. That is one of the best-selling events at Icarus Fest so far. People are flocking to this, which makes us very, very happy because we think Jack is completely brilliant.
In a beautiful classic theater that showed this when it originally came out. Beautiful chandelier. It looks like the theater at the opening of Clockwork Orange.
Gone with the Wind, when it first came out in 1939, was shown in the Rivoli Theater right here at Icarus Fest, where we will be on stage and showing the film. So check it out. Go to IcarusFest.com and come join us. If you live anywhere near New Jersey, if you live in the tri-state area or Pennsylvania or even New England, we have lots of people coming from those areas. We have people coming from the West Coast. We have people coming from Hawaii. We have people coming from Florida. It's quite something.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, come check it out. Icarus Fest, you can buy a whole weekend ticket. You can buy individual events, which a lot of people are doing. They're sort of going a la carte. There's all sorts of events all weekend. You can just choose which ones you want to go to. So again, go to IcarusFest.com and get your tickets now. The festival really, really starts tomorrow morning, to be honest with you. Tonight, we're just showing Blade Runner, just doing a screening of Blade Runner, but there's no panels. So it really starts tomorrow at 10 a.m. when Compact Magazine's Jeff Schillenberg takes over and hosts an incredible panel on neoliberal culture with Jack Mason and Jeremy Kaufman of Library and Odyssey fame, who's just recently been smashed by the SEC. So this is going to be something else. I can't wait for this. No, truly, Michael, this is the biggest firepower we've ever had at a weekend event. I've got
goosebumps, man. I've got goosebumps.
I've done now 6 of these events, and Icarus Fest is clearly the biggest.
Massive. Yeah.
And the venue is just amazing. And I mean, so the story is that the Williams Center reached out to me and asked me to help them organize something like this. And so we came up with this together and produced it together over the last 6 months, Michael here,
yep,
and the Williams Center. We've been working really hard on this, and we put together just about the best lineup, as I said, of speakers and thinkers that you'll ever see, and the films we're showing and the comedians we have and the topics we'll be discussing. And yeah.
Rutherford, New Jersey is gorgeous, by the way. It's an amazing town.
I didn't know how cool it was. I'd lived here I lived in New York for 20 years. I never knew that Rutherford is this little gem that's just 30 minutes outside of the city. Mm-hmm. It's got tremendous restaurants all up and down the street right outside the Williams Center. And
it looks
amazing.
All these old brick buildings that were made, that were standing 100 years ago when William Carlos Williams himself was writing his famous poems and inspiring the beat poets that inspired us. It's all full circle, man. This is beautiful.
Yep. It is not a neoliberal town.
No,
it's not chain stores and giant apartment buildings and tract homes. It's got what used to be called character.
Yep.
And it's a great place to have this. So, and the train stops literally like half a block from the venue. So it's a perfect, you can stay in New York and come to Icarus Fest quite easily because of that. And of course you could drive. So IcarusFest.com.
Right now, I just want to announce Rumble and YouTube are neck and neck. Like sometimes Rumble has more people, sometimes YouTube has more people. So we are where we want to be with that.
We are Team Rumble all the way.
Mm-hmm.
And we hope to see a day, which I think is actually coming soon, when Rumble exceeds YouTube in audience. And that seems to be happening really fast, as you're saying. I mean, in terms of our numbers, I mean, YouTube has stayed flat for months and Rumble has just gone straight up.
Absolutely.
So, we'll see.
Another big thing about the Icarus Fest that people are terrified of is apparently we are completely engulfed in smoke. It's impossible to go outside. We are in a Mad Max wasteland out here. Canada has sent its fires from the north to destroy all life here, and it's not safe to go outside. And
now, dude, wait. You do know that there are some people who live in New York who are watching this who know that you're full of shit. Because it actually cleared up overnight, but yesterday it's actually really nice now. But yesterday, as a lot of people know, the whole region, the entire Northeast, I think, or most of the Northeast, but certainly New York area, New Jersey area, was just dark orange air, light. It was horrendous, and the air smelled like campfire, and it was no good. Thankfully, it all dissipated last night, and we woke up to beautiful skies and crisp weather, and it's awesome. So another good thing about Icarus Fest, we nailed the weather. The weather's beautiful.
Yeah, 60, 70 degrees all weekend. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what caused these? Well, you're used to forest fires out there in California, and this is the first time we've seen something like this in New York, right?
Yeah, I felt like I flew home when I flew to New York. When I got off the plane, it was like, oh, this feels comfortable and familiar. Everything's ablaze, or feels like it's ablaze. Yeah. Thank God the drought in California is over. That was 5 horrible years when it did not rain at all for 5 years. Can you imagine that? I mean, it really did not rain for 5 solid years. And everything in California was brown. When I used to fly in over LA, it looked like a giant cow pie, just a giant flat turd, like in the desert. That's what LA looked like during the drought. And there were all the creeks, all the rivers, all the lakes were dry, were empty. It was terrible. And thankfully, we had humongous rain this last year. But let's stop talking about the weather.
Well, I mean, it is very, very political. A lot of our libertarian friends made this prescient prediction that lockdown that we just experienced because of a virus of certain origins might have been the protocol for lockdowns in the future, and that the future might hold lockdowns for climate change or whatever. So this is the first time where we got sort of deja vu. This is New York Governor Katherine Hochul talking about what people should do to stay safe.
As we all know, the normal air quality index, safe, normal, is 50. Parts of our state have seen a level of over 400 in the last 24 hours, and that is a dangerous situation. I can give you updates. We have some of the high areas. Brooklyn in the last hour was at 413. This is, again, safe level is 50. This is 415. Health warnings for everyone. The entire population is likely to be affected. Queens, right behind Brooklyn. So we're seeing these effects. That's 407 in the Queens area. That's an 800% increase over what is safe. And this is why we're very concerned. It has an immediate impact on people's health. Irritation to the eyes, the nose, breathing, coughing, and even shortness of breath. So our message right now is going to be reiterated multiple times because it is simply stay indoors. Also, to protect people, we believe that the N95 mask is an important way that people can stop the air particles from getting into their lungs. That is why I'm announcing we are making available 1 million N95 masks that we made available at state facilities. We have over 400,000 distributed to members of the public at state parks, MTA stations, Javits Center, Port Authority, and bus terminal, and anywhere else people need them.
Deja vu.
Yep.
I mean, that was almost word for word many of her press conferences during COVID. I mean, those are the things she said. I mean, right down to the N95 masks. Yeah, it's almost as if they've been practicing for this. It's almost as if they've been hoping for things like this to happen. And in fact, we know that they have. Jeffrey Tucker, who was on Unregistered, wrote an incredible article for the Brownstone Institute a couple of years ago, in which he lays out the history of this faction within the federal government that gradually took control. Beginning in 2003, they entered the federal government in 2003. This faction of people, federal employees, who were very, very pro lockdown, and they wanted the United States to be highly prepared to do a lockdown. And they advocated lockdowns when the avian bird flu happened and the other flu happened. I forget which one. There was another pandemic, mild pandemic, but they were foiled. Of course, those turned out to be not bad enough for them to actually be successful in lobbying to impose lockdowns then. But then COVID came, and this was manna from heaven for them. This was what they'd been waiting for. And as a matter of fact, of course, their idea about locking down society, closing businesses, closing schools, imposing mask mandates, the whole thing, that was in the plans since 2003, according to Jeffrey Tucker's article, which is extremely well sourced and cited, very scholarly and rigorous. I'm sure it's correct. And there they come in 2020. They get their wish, and they impose that lockdown on us. So it does feel awfully rehearsed, but like in a deeper way than just from COVID. I think that a lot of these politicians, especially those of the progressive bent, were very, very naturally attracted to COVID and the lockdown, because progressivism, the tradition of progressivism going back to the late 19th century and the progressive era, was all about this one phrase, which the progressives used. This is what they said they were about: social engineering. Progressivism was always about, explicitly, this is what progressives said, the well-ordered society, creating the socially engineered, well-ordered society. And many of them used the metaphor of the factory. A lot of progressive intellectuals at the time talked about reorganizing all of society as if it were a factory, with each citizen playing a particular discrete function within the overall machine of America, of the nation, all democratic, by the way, right? This would all be voluntary democratic participation. And this is true, which means that it was a totalitarianism that was imposed on oneself, right? It was internalizing the police. It was internalizing the manager, the city manager, the state, the governor, the politicians, internalizing that social discipline, and doing what the progressives wanted you to do, which was to be a high functioning, efficient, and completely orderly citizen who lived to serve the interests of the state. And those are words I'm not inventing. Those are actually those are quotes from major progressive thinkers at the time. So we're talking about more than 100 years ago, those progressives, but you could see why people with that mindset, that really personality, that psychology, which it really is. There's certain people who want to control others, who want to manage society. They're weird, there's very few of them, but they end up being the politicians. But progressives, more than anyone in politics, really were about that. They really, just for whatever reason, personally, they found great pleasure in organizing, regulating, and managing society, and especially people. So COVID clearly is a tremendous opportunity for those of the progressive tradition, those who come from that era of progressivism, like Kathy Hochul, like Gavin Newsom. Ask Gavin Newsom who his heroes are in American political history. He'll say the progressives, for sure. That's where the suffragists came out of. That's where the original civil rights movement came out of. It's where the original labor movement came out of. So, this is their thing, progressivism. And so, yes, of course, they took to COVID like flies to shit or something. They loved it. They loved it. And it just gave them every opportunity in the world. And this is what a lot of the critics of the lockdowns missed, was the historical context. Why were these people so keen on locking down society, right? On this hyper micromanagement of people's lives. Because, they weren't in other countries. There were many, many countries in Africa, in Latin America, in Asia. They didn't give a shit. The governments, they didn't care. They didn't do much at all. Interestingly, they had very low infection rates and very low death rates, right? But they also don't have a progressive political tradition in those countries, for better or worse. They just don't have a tradition of people who are social engineers.
Same with the Amish and the homeless.
Correct. Also had low rates of infection and very little progressivism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yes, COVID and progressivism were a marriage made in hell.
Well, remember when George Floyd riots kicked off and all the scientists were saying, turns out the real pandemic was white supremacy. Well, turns out the real pandemic was progressivism.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Yes.
Yep.
And, and then we can talk about progressivism and imperialism, the American wars abroad, every single one of them, beginning with the Civil War, if you want to consider that a war abroad, which you should, was thought up by a progressive intellectual. Every one of them. Civil War, Spanish-American War, World War I and II, Korea, Vietnam. Every single one of those wars was the idea of some guy from Harvard or Columbia. It's remarkable. There's about 24 intellectuals from the Ivy League who have thought up every war America's ever been in.
Thad, before you get too far into this point, I just want to acknowledge what you were saying before. This is why the libertarian world still has love for you. Your first analysis was a combination of Rothbard on the progressive area and Foucault on the discipline and punish level.
Yeah.
So,
well, they like my Rothbardianism, but I had to teach them about Foucault.
Yeah.
And by the way, I just decided we're gonna do a series on Foucault at Unregistered Academy. I'm gonna do a course on each book.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this is the most necessary thing, and it's what people most want, because Foucault is the most cited scholar in academia. It's amazing. He took over Marx about 10 years ago. When I entered grad school in 1991, Marx was the most cited scholar in academia, right? In all scholarly work. But while I was in grad school, it became Foucault. So anyway, yes. So Foucault, thank you for that. Yeah, libertarians, a lot of the hippest libertarians love Foucault because they realize that he's all about their politics. Mm-hmm. He's the greatest philosophical supporter of libertarian politics. Very few libertarians knew that a while ago, but when I started hanging out with libertarians, that was the first thing I thought, because I was coming out of postmodernism, and I was like, yo, you guys need to get together, you pomos and you libertarians, because you really have the same soul politically. So yes, anyway, so progressivism, yes. It's like the world is divided between two groups of people, basically, in my view, when it comes to politics. And I've said this before, I'll say it again. A small minority, again, of people who, for whatever reason, desire to control masses of people. And then the rest of us. That's the most important divide in any society. Who wants to manage the place and who doesn't care, right? And thank God it's always a very small minority, right, who actually want to go and run things and put people in prison. And
well, this is the most radical part of your politics, is that you consciously see yourself as outside of politics itself, which is a radical reframing of the process. You see everything as political in the postmodern sense,
right?
But you're not at all interested in controlling other people.
Oh yeah.
You have policy ideas, and you're ambivalent towards certain things, and you're curious about, hey, maybe this social safety net might help people. I don't know. But you fundamentally have no interest in managing the levers of power, and you don't even think that that's something that you should care about, which is very realistic and very, very radical to accept, because the whole idea of public school is to train you to be a good citizen, to pull that lever to tell who you want to influence. And you know what? If you're really good, maybe you'll get a position yourself in power.
Yep. And to march off to war when they call.
Yeah.
And to pay your taxes on time and to their full extent, right? And to be cheerful with law enforcement officers, cheerful and always compliant, right? And with the law in general, and deferential to authority. That's a big one, right? deferential, not just to politicians, but to scientists, especially those who are affiliated with the state, which is almost all scientists, by the way. Almost all scientists have some connection to the state through funding and other or institutions, right? And you saw that in COVID, right? The state was telling us to worship the scientists, to defer to them, defer to your authorities, defer to the scientists, and of course the political leaders, the heads of the great institutions that are controlled by the what progressives. Isn't it interesting how that works? All the institutions controlled by progressives like academia and science, the media, we were told to defer to them, weren't we? That's a great progressive notion. It's interesting that the progressives claim to be the Democrats, the great Democrats par excellence, the most democratic of all Americans they think. But in this way, no. I mean, they're interested, again, in experts, experts controlling things, running things. It's a democracy of experts. It's an expertocracy. I think there's a better word for that.
Well, a lot of the guests at Icarus Fest are part of the movement, not consciously choosing to be part of this movement, but they're being called the post-left, quote unquote.
Right.
And one of the most useful, I won't say favorite, but one of the most useful accounts on Twitter to follow is Post-Left Watch, which is, I guess, a Democrat. There's no other way to say.
That's the account that attacks everybody at Icarus Fest. That's what they do. Yeah.
Yeah. Who said that we're all being funded by Putin, which
we are.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just the ruble's conversion rate is kind of hard to process right now, so we're a little back on our payments. But
I love being rich. I mean, ever since the Ukraine war started, I gotta say, it's been really nice to be rich for the first time in my life. And listen, I mean, he's not perfect, but thank you, Vlad, for that. Seriously.
Yeah, there's nothing Vladimir Putin loves doing more than giving podcasters money to.
I mean, and your mom's new house that you got her. I mean, that was really sweet. You know what I mean? Like, so listen, I get it. Like, he started a war bad, but like, he's paying the bills over here, and we really appreciate that.
Yeah. So, somebody has to keep the lights on here. But, okay, but yeah, they give this movement the epithet of post-left. Like, these are people who used to be on the left, but they're no longer.
So, just to be clear, you're talking about Glenn Greenwald, Michael Tracy, who's here, Max Blumenthal, who's here, Aaron Mate, who's here, and there's a couple others, not a lot. It's really small. I mean, it's truly like about a half a dozen. Jimmy Dore, is a good Kurt Metzger, who's here.
Everybody, though. I mean, even RFK Jr., now Cornel West is being talked about. Brianna Joy Gray, they're going after.
Okay.
Anybody with any little dissidence, anybody who has any criticism of the DNC is being called post-left.
The criticisms of the DNC and wokeness.
Yeah.
Those two things. That's what unites all these people we're talking about. None of us in this part of the left, and I'm starting to feel like I'm back in the left, by the way.
The post-left to me feels like the true left now. Like, we're
these people, because I can hang out with these people. This is my fam right here. Like, even though we might still disagree about economics and stuff, but like, boy, in terms of what's going on in the world right now, we are in lockstep. That portion of the left is hostile to those two things: the Democratic Party, generally, and wokeness, let's say identity politics. That's really what it is to the current state of the Democratic Party, but historically the Democratic Party too, actually, and identity politics. All these dissident lefties. That's what we all believe. So, it makes for a very interesting conversation because it's almost like a time capsule. It's like, oh, this is the way the left used to think in like the 1990s. I remember them back then. You're not old enough, but I was around, and I was actually kind of very much a part of the left in the 90s when I was in New York at Columbia. And we were not stuck on identity politics the way that people are now. I mean, we certainly had that ethos, sure. And the civil rights movement, of course, was like this holy thing. And I get it. Feminism was unquestioned. Sure. But it was a lighter thing. It was called political correctness then. Wokeness is militant, aggressive, actually violent, blatantly totalitarian, quite Maoist, depends on public shaming. Political correctness was sort of about that in the 90s, but it was nothing compared to what's happening now, where people actually are losing their livelihoods because of this. So yeah, this left that's emerged, this tiny little left. It's interesting. I mean, it's only like half a dozen people, but they have quite a large audience. I mean, Jimmy Dore has more than 1 million subscribers on YouTube. Glenn Greenwald has about, I think, 500,000 on Rumble. Max and Aaron on Gray Zone has about 300 or 400,000 subscribers on YouTube. Michael Tracy, I think, has 500,000 Twitter followers. So there is about something around, I'd say around 1 million people apparently in this country, somewhere around there, who are sympathetic to the politics that's left wing, but hates the DNC and the woke. That's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
That's really exciting.
Yeah,
they're very anti-war. That's front for them. That's in the front for them. Have you guys noticed how the identity politics woke people never mention war except to support it in Ukraine? They don't care about war anymore. It's not it's not an issue anymore for the liberals, for that portion of the left.
Well, for them, it's white on white, so there's no brown people to feel sorry for. And Vladimir Putin's a fascist. So end of story, mean guy, drop nukes on him, do whatever you have to do.
It's a story that needs to be told. And, it actually sort of started in a way with the Green Party in Germany, of all things. The Green Party was the great inspiration for all the people I grew up with on the left in the 80s and 90s. In the 80s is when the Green Party in Germany sort of became a force in German politics. And they had all these new ideas. They sort of incorporated interesting ideas about environmentalism with socialism and feminism. And so they were kind of the vanguard of left-wing thinking back in the 1980s. All my friends loved the Green Party. And now guess who's the leading proponent of war with Russia in Germany? It's the Green Party. And who's the leading proponent of NATO in Germany? It's the Green Party. It's remarkable what's happened with the left. Lily Lynch wrote an article recently in, I think it's New Left Review, about this, about how the European left has been seduced by NATO. And I would say the American left too, although it's mostly like liberal left in this country, but they just don't even ask questions about NATO, about American foreign policy, about the 500 military bases around the world. They might complain about the military budget a little bit, but not really. I mean, every one of their presidents has increased it. Biden and Obama have both increased it. And by the way, the money spent on Ukraine, which is about $150 billion, that's off the books. Do you guys know that? That's out of the budget. So there's the military budget. There's the stuff that's been allocated by Congress, appropriated by Congress. And then there's spending on Ukraine, which is a different category. 150 billion, not even accounted for in that. So this dissident left grouping movement, I don't know what you want to call it, which has about 500,000, half a dozen figureheads, sort of leaders, I would say, intellectual leaders. And then it has roughly about 1 million people in its audience. But so they're anti-war first and foremost, which I just love. And that's what attracted me to libertarians in the first place, because that's always been the most important issue to me. And especially if you're talking about national American politics, it needs to be the only issue you should talk about, almost. I mean, like, it's by far the most important issue for national American US politics. The presidential race should be almost entirely a discussion about foreign policy, because he's the fucking commander in chief. He runs the thing. And he has very little power domestically, actually. No one talks about this. We're getting closer and everybody who follows the Ukraine war, everybody, have you noticed this? Everybody who's followed the Ukraine war has said we are getting closer to World War III and nuclear war. Everybody. So why are we not talking about this in the goddamn presidential campaign? I mean, Trump does, actually, I take it back. Why is Biden not talking about it? Because very amazingly, what is it? 3 of the top 5 candidates are calling for immediate end to the Ukraine war. Mm-hmm. Well, let's see. It's Trump, RFK, and who's the third? There's the third one.
Well, DeSantis a little bit.
Sort of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
DeSantis said he hasn't been too concrete about it, but he did say he would enter peace negotiations.
Two of the 3, I should say. Yeah, 2 of the top 3 candidates for president have called for immediate cessation of the war.
Yeah. Well, and Biden doesn't talk about it because I think Amazing. On the ground, Batya Ungar-Sargon talked about this recently. She said literally every working class person she's talked to, left or right, is completely dumbfounded as to why we're spending so much money in Ukraine when there's so many problems at home.
Good. I'm glad she's finding that out. Yeah. And I'm glad that's happening. I would imagine it's true. I mean, I would think if you asked your average truck driver who's not political and told him that we had given $150 billion to Ukraine and told him nothing else for a war with Russia, just told him that, nothing else, I can't imagine he would be for that. I mean, so I mean, I do think this is the demonization of Putin and Russia generally, and then the conduct of the Ukraine war, that whole thing together. I do believe, and I said this on Twitter, I do believe this is the greatest and most effective psyop in human history. It has convinced virtually the entire civilian population of Western Europe and North America that Vladimir Putin is the devil who wants to take over the world, and that NATO is absolutely essential for eternity. This is and made up whole stories about Putin to support this. All these alleged assassination attempts, these poisonings of journalists. I looked into those, by the way. I didn't know. I'd always heard this too, and I thought it must be true to some extent. I looked into all of those, all the alleged assassination attempts by Putin against others, these poisonings. They're all bullshit. They're all bullshit. There's either just no evidence, or there's contradictory evidence, or it's been found out that these people were lying. And the funniest thing is that in almost every case, the target, the victim, didn't die. That's odd. Putin is so powerful. I mean, he is powerful, I mean, if he wants to kill you, couldn't he kill you? Couldn't he get it done? And it's so funny that the people, who want to make hay out of this stuff don't die. They can now talk. They can continue to say things about Putin. Anyway, so the demonization of Putin and Russia and the propaganda for Ukraine in this war, really, I gotta say, hats off to the CIA and the NED and the State Department and all of their media lackeys. Outstanding work, honestly. I mean, you've convinced every housewife in America that it is essential for us to give all of our money to Ukraine and to kill Russians.
So ask Michael Hastings what happens to journalists who are critical of the United States war machine. What happens?
Kaboom.
Yeah.
Kaboom. Now, you're conspiracy theorizing, son. Michael Hastings was a journalist who was writing about, what was he writing about specifically?
Oh,
it was some hot topic in foreign policy. I forget.
Yeah. Well, man, it's been a while since I looked into that.
It's about a decade, 10 years ago. And he was in LA, actually, when I was living in LA. I think this happened.
He's the guy who, he was really going into General Stanley McChrystal.
Afghanistan stuff?
Yeah, that McChrystal was critical of Obama's policy with Afghanistan, continuing that war.
So Hastings was a left-wing investigative journalist who was covering, I think, the war on terror generally, and was about to write a big article exposing something. And he crashed his car into a tree on, I think it was Melrose, right in the middle of LA, and it burst into flames, and he died instantly. Now, that's all we know. That's it. That's all we know. But many people did speculate, of course, that maybe some bad people had something to do with this. The thing is, Michael, to accuse the Central Intelligence Agency of carrying out assassinations of its opponents is pretty irresponsible, don't you think? I mean, what kind of evidence do you have that the CIA would do something like that?
Yeah. Well, do you know, I want to bring this up. So it's Pride Month, and the CIA is woke this year.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, they've been increasingly woke forever. Let me pull this up. But they just released on Twitter their little thing about Pride Month.
It's inspiring.
It really is. Just like the FHM frizzy-haired mulatta who was on the cover.
Yeah.
As Jack Mason would like to call it. But let's see. Right here, this Twitter user brought up the incident of James Kronthal, a gay CIA agent, a Dulles protege, who committed suicide after he was blackmailed because he flipped intel to the Russians. Not sure if you're familiar with that story, but Yeah. Here we go.
Yeah.
We got the CIA telling us it's Pride Month. Welcome.
Yeah, this is
Wellness, equality,
it's all-
LGBTQ plus, community, openness, and me. Pride Month is an occasion for all of us at the agency to pay tribute to our rich history, community, and missions contributions of our LGBTQ plus officers.
Yeah, this is so this is part of a campaign that is about 20 years old by the foreign policy establishment, led by the intelligence agencies, to convince liberals or make them very comfortable with the national security state. And the Truman Project, everyone should look up the Truman Project. Max Blumenthal, who's at Icarus Fest, just crashed a meeting of the Truman Project and asked them some very interesting questions. But the Truman Project was founded a couple decades ago by these liberal Democrats with the express mission of incorporating, integrating Democrat people of color and women and LGBT folk into the national security apparatus to get them very comfortable with the CIA and the FBI.
Well, I'm surprised the FBI didn't release a statement acknowledging their queer icon, J. Edgar Hoover.
Right. And then the State Department, this begins with Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State, by the way. That's when this all starts. When LGBT became a major weapon of the foreign policy establishment. So that's when the State Department started imposing LGBT laws, basically, on these third world countries, in exchange for their foreign aid, and they yanked the foreign aid from countries that had bad LGBTQ policies. So Uganda is the latest, right? They just passed this very serious anti-gay law.
Mm-hmm.
And guarantee you the State Department probably already has imposed sanctions or something on them and will do more. And you will not get foreign aid in Uganda, I can tell you that. The United States is not going to help you anymore if you're going to do that, unless the Russians come into Uganda. If the Russians come into Uganda and the Ugandans don't want them there, you can be quite sure the United States will pour billions of dollars into your country
to arm the moderate rebels.
Whoever's there, moderate, radical, milquetoast, what any rebel will do if the bad guys are on the other end. Yeah. They are absolutely obsessed with Russia. They will not stop until Vladimir Putin is destroyed. They will not stop until the Russian Federation is dismembered and the government is compliant with the United States. They will not stop. That's what they've said.
That Uganda story was a big flashpoint for the right because Ted Cruz issued a statement on Twitter last week about how denouncing the law, saying that it's a horrible violation of human rights, and pretty much everybody I saw on the right said that's none of our business. We don't care. Aren't you supposed to be anti-woke? I don't care what Ugandans think about homosexuality.
Well, how about anti-imperialist? That's all I care about. Like, it's not my business what Ugandans do. Attempting to impose any set of norms or beliefs or values on a people across the planet like that is obviously a form of imperialism. It doesn't matter if you're imposing values that you love. If you're super pro-gay, it doesn't matter if you're imposing gay love. It's still, that's imperialism. People should be allowed to hate.
Yeah.
I fight for your right to hate. I do. I want to hate people. I want to have the right to hate. It's amazing. They've essentially outlawed hatred. I mean, in Europe, it's literally outlawed. You will actually go to prison for speaking certain forms of hatred. In the United States, you're outlawed culturally. Socially, you'll be shamed and sanctioned in various ways and punished in various ways if you express certain kinds of hate. Of course, hatred of white men, hatred of Republicans, hatred of rich people, hatred of, I don't know, celebrities, that's all fine. That's all encouraged, actually. But hatred of certain groups will actually get you punished in material ways.
And I think the details of that law were very much exaggerated in the press. The harshest punishments were dished out to what they called aggravated homosexuality, which, sounds silly on face value, but I think that's just their way of saying rape. And
Oh, really?
I'm pretty sure aggravated,
I mean, aggravated usually means rape.
a violent instance of the sexual act. So
Well, but there's already laws against rape. Why do they need to add this?
yeah, again, legislators are very redundant a lot, but
it's pretty clearly pretty terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, for someone who like does value the rights of gay people to live freely, it is terrible. But I don't live in Uganda, and apparently it's like 90% of the population loves this law.
Mhm.
I've heard that like the opinion polls are like off the charts.
Mhm.
So what are you going to do? Like invade them? Because that's the only way you're going to stop it. The only way you're going to stop it is send in the Marines
Mhm.
and force a government on them that is run by Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, like military imperialism. Now it's just sort of economic and cultural imperialism that we're imposing on them.
Mhm.
But the only way to stop it is through military force. So if you don't want to do that, shut the fuck up and let those people do whatever they want.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I mean, same with female genital mutilation. This is the classic old example we always have debated about. Like, how many Americans are cool with that practice, right? I mean, if we found out that our friends did that to their daughters, like we'd be beyond horrified. Okay,
Yeah.
sure.
CBS.
I'm one of those. I completely feel that. Yes, I mean that would just horrify me to the nth degree. But the only way you're going to stop it from being done in Africa and the Middle East is by, again, sending in the 82nd Airborne. I mean, so if you're not willing to do that, see, that's where the neocons, in a sense, I sort of respect them, because they actually are not themselves personally, but they're willing to send the army in to actually do this kind of thing, to actually fundamentally change cultures in other countries. But if you're not serious about that, if you're not willing to do that, then you need to stop talking.
Mhm.
I mean, honestly, stop judging, stop, you can study other cultures, of course, but stop imposing your own values on them. Even if you're just speaking that will eventually lead to something like a military invasion. It will. If more and more people speak this cultural imperialism, more and more people speak about, ordinary people speak about how people in some other country live poorly and need to be uplifted, right? The more likely it is, of course, that the politicians will go to war in that country. So study other cultures and stop judging them.
Yeah. Well, yeah, at least reserve your judgment.
Right.
So,
Thank you. Right.
Yeah. So 2 years ago, you interviewed a guy I'm a big fan of, Germinal G. Vaughan, the economist from Ivory Coast, West Africa. Yeah.
Mhm.
And you asked him, hey, there's these very socially conservative attitudes in much of West Africa. Are these the results of the colonizers who brought in Christianity or Islam? And he said,
Right.
no, this is our attitudes. This is how we feel. We are more conservative than Europe. We are more conservative than the West. Always have been. Probably always will be if we have our own determination.
Yeah, on certain issues,
Yeah.
like these.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
In other ways, they're more liberal, but it's an entirely different culture with their own attitudes.
Right. Yeah. I just wanted to clarify the thing about not judging. I don't mean, certainly I have my own, I certainly judge other cultures against my own values, I guess. So
Mhm.
like, I'm very clear about which national cultures I dislike and I don't want to live in, I don't want to be a part of because I just don't like it, or it doesn't match my values, what I value. So I'm not saying like give that up, of course, always make choices about what you want. I'm talking about moral judgments, making claims about the absolute value of some other culture being good or bad, or better or worse than our culture. Get out of that business. That is imperialism. And it's actually of a piece, believe it or not, with military imperialism. The latter depends upon the former. There is no military intervention in any country unless the people want it and call for it or lay the ground for it by saying things like, gosh, those poor Iraqis, they should be liberated from that bad man Saddam Hussein. They live so terribly. We should save them, right? Or they need to be saved. That was again what George Bush wanted to hear. So
Mhm. Yeah. Wow. So the point I was bringing up about the post left, was these people kind of are the true left. They're the only people who believe in debates anymore. They're the only people who believe that, hey, the American public should be given a set of choices and should be allowed to choose from those choices who their leaders are.
Right.
And, a guy that we're both a fan of, Cornel West, just announced his candidacy with the People's Party. I can play the announcement real quick.
Good.
If you want to check that out.
Yeah, please.
In these bleak times, I have decided to run for truth and justice, which takes the form of running for president of the United States as a candidate for the People's Party. I enter into quest for truth. I enter into quest for justice. And the presidency is just one vehicle to pursue that truth and justice, what I've been trying to do all of my life. I come from a tradition where I care.
First thing that everyone should know, because everyone's thinking about the music right now, right? Is that Cornel is from Sacramento, and he went to a church, of course, in Sacramento, a black church, not surprisingly. The organist at his church, this is in the 1960s, was Sylvester "Sly" Stallone of the Family Stone.
Stone, not Stallone.
Did I say Stallone?
Yeah.
No, I really?
You did. Yeah.
Stone. Stallone.
Stone. Yeah, but yeah.
Sly Stone.
Yeah.
Sly and the Family Stone. So, one of the greatest soul funk bands of all time. And so Cornel he's always been so musical in the way he speaks. And he's just such a beautiful orator and always has been. So I knew Cornel like a tiny bit back in the 90s when I was in grad school. I organized this big conference there, and he was one of the main speakers. And he calls me up. I was just this little flunky grad student at the time. I was nobody, but he calls me up to get some information or something. And he says, I say, hello. He says, Brother Thaddeus, how you doing today? I mean, he is that kind of guy, and he's just so warm and genuine and generous. And the best thing about Cornel West, by far, and he stands head and shoulders above almost everyone else on the left, is that he is open to hear what you have to say. Not only that, he's going to respond to what you have to say in a way that's not dismissive or ad hominem. He's not going to make fun of you. He's not going to call you names. He's going to take, guess what, your ideas seriously. Cornel West is remarkable.
He's going to treat you with dignity. He's going to treat you with dignity. He always does, yeah.
Absolutely. And no matter what your ideas are, and there is just no one else on the left who does that. So for that alone, I might vote for him. I'm not kidding. Because that alone, and that Cornel has always been anti-war, solid on foreign policy, his whole life, his whole career. He's a democratic socialist. Yeah, he wants to nationalize industries. I mean, I don't think that's going to happen, so I wouldn't be too worried about it. But yeah, that's terrible ideas. So yeah, he's a real socialist. But again, in a way, I sort of respect that because it takes some thinking to be a socialist. It's not easy to be a socialist.
This isn't like RFK, where RFK is trying to primary Biden. I think RFK Jr., his role is to get the dissidents paying attention to the election, and then ultimately support Biden when RFK Jr. ends up endorsing Biden when Biden gets a nomination. Bobby Kennedy Jr. has said nothing but good things about Biden personally. They've been good friends. He's given them awards. Like, they're cool, and he's always been an establishment Democrat guy. Despite his current criticisms, I think he's going to end up endorsing Biden. But
Irish. It's the old Northeast liberal Democrat Irish mafia.
Irish Catholic mafia.
Seriously, yeah, Irish Catholic mafia.
But Cornel West is third partying this, so he might be able to take some serious votes from the left during the general election.
No, I think you're right. I think like the Jacobin readership, the serious left, the actual socialist left, will have a hard time. Wow, especially because Cornel's black and he is a god. I mean, he is loved on the left. He is adored on the left by serious lefties like Marxists and socialists. Everybody loves him. It'll be very hard for those people to vote for Biden, which is what most of them did, by the way. The vast majority of them voted for Biden last time. And they usually cave in at the last minute. By the way, those lefties, it's kind of disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
The DSA people and the Jacobin people, which by the way is like, we're talking about maybe 1 million people. This is not a small deal anymore. This is a pretty serious force in American politics. They have a pretty big voice. I mean, they have multiple members of Congress in the DSA. Bernie was a founder of the DSA. AOC's in it. Omar's in it. A bunch of them are in it. I forget where I was going there.
Oh, well, those people could very easily commit to Cornel West. He's a celebrity. He's a popular support.
So when it was between Trump and Biden, they all went with Biden. They all voted for Biden. They didn't go for, most of them did not go for a third party. It was incredible, like sellout, because they know Biden. They understand him like we do. Like, the left, hard left,
Mm-hmm.
they understand. They know all about the Biden crime bill. They know all about the corporations. They all know all about Ukraine. They know all about all of it. I mean, he's one of the worst senators in modern history from our perspective and from a left wing or a libertarian perspective. But now if it's Cornel West in there, how are they going to walk around saying they didn't vote for Cornel West when they had an opportunity? Because that is a badge of honor on the left, man. You get to vote for Cornel West for president? Fuck yeah. You have the Cornel West fucking for president, not fucking for president. You have the fucking.
We should make those.
Cornel's, by the way, not a Puritan.
Yep.
I'll just say that.
Yeah.
There's some. Yeah, he's not a Puritan. Another thing I love about him.
Yeah.
They're
gonna
love that.
Real quick on that tip. Everybody should go to censored.tv, Gavin McInnes's channel. And when Gavin launched that, he had Cornel West and Candace Owens sit down for a conversation, and it was
really
yeah.
That's tremendous.
It's awesome, and
I've got to watch that.
It's hilarious and cute how Cornel kind of flirts with Candace.
Oh no, right? Yeah, he's not a Puritan.
Yep.
Yeah, no, yeah. Everyone should vote for Cornel West. So what if he nationalizes all of the whole American economy? That's cool. Like it's fine, really. You'll get over it. You'll have the coolest president imaginable. I mean,
if Cornel West is in charge. I mean, that's the benevolent dictator right there. So I'm cool with it.
I mean, the thing is, the whole thing would just implode immediately because he's not mean enough to be president.
Yeah,
you have to be mean.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have to be. You have to like make decisions that hurt people or kill people like daily. I mean, it's what being a political office holder means. That's what it is. The left, the serious left, the about 1 million Americans left, the AOC left, the Bernie Sanders left, a very significant force. They're gonna fucking love the Cornel West 2024 t-shirt that they're gonna put on their babies. Watch.
Yeah, that's a bumper sticker that you will have on the car for the rest of your life.
You will see white babies all over this country with Cornel West for president t-shirts on. I guarantee you. Onesies. There's going to be Cornel West onesies on every white liberal baby in this white left-wing baby in this country.
In 2040, you're going to see cars still with Cornel West 2024 on them.
Yep. Oh yeah. Oh, they'll keep that forever. No, they'll never scrape that off their bumper.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, they're going to die with that. They're never going to sell the car either. I mean, no, it's such a badge of honor.
Yeah. And again, I saw a lot of people who caved in and voted for Hillary, caved in, voted for Biden, who are saying, you know what, now I am supporting Brother Cornel West, and they are not falling for the Trump is Hitler for a third time.
Yep.
So
I say this as someone who was a volunteer for the Jesse Jackson 1988 presidential campaign. And he sure was thrilling to me and a lot of us. The left loved that, man. His campaign was amazing for the left. And his politics are basically the same as Cornel West's. He's very much a DSA kind of guy. Not as quite hard a socialist, but he's not against it either. He's not against the socialism. Jesse is not nearly as kind a person as Cornel. You know, Jesse understands what being a politician is, and he is that. Yeah. So he's more the fire and brimstone preacher, whereas Cornel's more that loving, nurturing, paternal preacher. Mm-hmm. You know, so it's just too thrilling. You know, a black guy who's kind of cool and like unmistakably black, unambiguously black, like actually from the hood, essentially. In both cases, Jesse Jackson and Cornel West, who have like the politics you wish everyone had when you're growing up. That's what I did. I mean, as a socialist kid, I mean, that is irresistible. There's no way you can walk away from that. So Biden, to this, I'm just making a very long explanation for your point, not explanation, just a reiteration of your point, that they ain't gonna vote for Biden, which means Trump 2, baby, it's coming up. I think. I don't know. It seems inevitable, but I'm always wrong about these things.
Yeah. Well, I guess we should note that Pence also threw his name in the hat this week.
I mean, but honestly, how is Trump not going to win this?
The whole thing?
I mean, look at Biden's numbers. They're unbelievably bad.
Yeah.
They're historically bad. I mean, CNN is like calling, shouting alarms about this.
Yeah. Well, what was it? 2 or 3 weeks ago, we got kicked off of YouTube for saying some skeptical things about the 2020 election. And YouTube released a statement saying that, you know what, it's okay to start questioning that now, that they're not going to do. Yeah.
It is?
Yeah. I think
we just got to strike for that.
We got to strike like on the last day that it was still a thing to
You're
strike.
kidding.
It was hilarious. Yeah. But
so I don't have to say election fornication anymore. I can actually, or fortification. I can actually use the real word now.
But I think that is Biden's path to victory, is the fortification of the elections. Again.
If we spell the words, do the algos pick it up? Do the bots pick it up?
Yeah. If we say RIGGET.
Stop.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. That's great. Oh, the bots can spell, huh?
Yeah.
They're that smart, huh? God damn. Okay. Well,
but that's the thing about Biden is there were very unique circumstances that were legislated into the 2020 election that have not changed, that I don't see that it's going to be very hard for the Republicans to overcome with mail-in voting. So I see that as a potential Biden path to victory.
All the fortification that was done in 2020.
Yeah.
Which Time Magazine, what's her name? Molly Ball? No, something. There was that famous article in Time Magazine, cover article, about how the Democrats fortified the election. Basically, RIG, the rest of it, in various ways that were not directly illegal, but I guess I would say completely.
Yeah, Molly Ball. You're right.
Molly Ball. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, they learned a lot and they imposed a lot of new rules, a lot of new systems. Of course, the drop boxes, most notoriously, that was part of that. Drop boxes. Are you kidding me? Really? I mean, I can't believe that. I never saw one in person, but they think that can't be, like, you can't cheat on that. Like, seriously, what? It's just it looks like a mailbox. You stuff shit in it. Like, how could that? Are you serious? On the street, just standing there on the street all night long, all day long, 24/7. No one's watching it. Like, of course. Like, what?
Yeah.
And
all these again.
But most importantly, this is the only point to make about the election of 2020. It's like anybody who is absolutely sure that it wasn't stolen. Just say to them, what did Democrats think of Trump? Did they dislike him intensely? No, they thought he was Hitler. Clearly. And because of Russiagate, clearly demonstrated that they were absolutely willing to do anything, go by any means necessary to remove that guy from power permanently. Clearly, they impeached him twice, failed at it twice, which tells you that they were desperate.
Yeah.
Flailing at him.
Well, okay. Here's the thing about Trump, real quick.
Of course, wait, I'm just saying. So, and then they were telling everybody for years that the cat was Hitler.
Yeah.
And they all believed it, that he was Hitler or the Grand Wizard. Right? So, how on earth would they not do what they could to ensure that Biden won the election by any means necessary, because they'd already shown that they're willing to do that through Russiagate and many other things. Many other things. They were willing to cheat to get Trump out of there.
Mm-hmm.
So why wouldn't they do it in the damn election? I have never heard a good response to that.
Well, you were talking about what's the path in what's blocking Trump from becoming president again. And both chats, there isn't a super chat, but both chats are wanting us to talk about Trump's indictment right now. And both chats are trying to talk about Trump's indictment right now. So we got some house guests here. But Trump has been, there's the incident with Stormy Daniels, and now there's this incident with the documents, the top secret documents that were in Mar-a-Lago. He was indicted for that. He's going to be dealing with lawyers and court in a very public way. I think his trial begins in March of next year, which is a huge impediment to a political campaign, to be having to deal with this on top of all that. So the lawfare happening against Trump is a very concerted effort to kneecap him as he tries to run another presidential election.
Yeah. Yeah, they moved toward lawfare against Trump, and then to all the January 6th people, and to Trump supporters generally. I mean, there's been incredible lawfare against that whole movement, the entire MAGA movement. I mean, look what happened to Bannon. I mean, how many times did he get charged with something? I can't even keep track. I mean, and I watched his show and I'm like, wait, are you under indictment right now? Aren't you? Like, aren't you supposed to be, they're constantly, Peter Navarro too, like he was indicted for something, I forget, but like they've all been in legal trouble recently. And of course, Trump is the top of this, and it's just incredible the amount of cheating that they do against Trump. I mean, it's just the most cynical, dishonest, corrupt thing I've seen in American politics. And I'm including Nixon. I mean, I was conscious for Nixon, so I even sort of remember it. I certainly have studied it. I mean, like, there's nothing as corrupt as this Democratic Party. I don't know what else to say about it. I mean, it's really incredible. And that they've convinced, like, my parents love the Democratic Party. They love the Democrats like family, and these are very intelligent people. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, it's not just my parents, there's, this army of people out there who basically control the country and run it, dominate its institutions, dominate the culture, who love the Democratic Party. And I don't know. It's just, it's so hard, because a lot of these people grew up as anti-Vietnam War protesters and civil rights protesters, activists, I mean, did some really good work, and had some really good causes and were really smart about it. And now they're like pro-NATO.
Yeah.
What?
Well,
how square is that?
When the civil case against Trump for sexual assault came out, a lot of commentators were saying that, hey, you know what? This is kind of excessive. It might be seen as political prosecution. America loves an underdog. And so if Trump has ammo to say, hey, I'm being persecuted, it might energize his base and even get moderates to see him in a more sympathetic light. So I think, again, this might actually play in his favor again.
No, I think we saw this. I think, didn't his poll numbers jump a lot for one of the indictments? I forget what happened, but no, clearly his numbers have gone up since the indictment, since the Alvin Bragg indictment. I know that his poll numbers have gone up. Trump's been on a run ever since that indictment came down. What was that, like a month ago? And a lot of that was just, as you're saying, it was simply reaction against this lawfare campaign against Trump. I mean, his people are fierce and loyal and passionate, and so they're not going away either, because the guy's on a roll. I don't see how on earth he could lose this. I mean, unless they like really rig it.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of America is tired of Trump, and I think it's going to be hard for him to energize a lot of the population. I know a decent number of Republicans who voted for Trump twice who are on the DeSantis train or even the Pence train because they just want something new. Trump is so polarizing and so hated that, they want America to function and move forward, and they don't want 4 more years of TDS.
Right. Exactly. The only reason I would not want Trump, really, or that I would care, is that I'm just so sick of the TDS, not so much Trump.
Yeah.
But the mind,
hysterical political climate that he is a part of.
He engenders, basically, or he provokes or something. I don't know, but I wouldn't say he creates it. It's not his fault, but he provokes it into being, and it's just horrible to live among it. If you live on the coasts, if you live in a big city, you know what I'm talking about. It's just all pervasive. It's like living in a cult. Mm-hmm. And the anti-Trump thing, really, that's really the cult. That's what really broke their brains. And so that, just to give us relief from that, finally, like after 7 years or whatever it's been of TDS, I could use a break, but otherwise, no.
Yeah,
he's doing great.
Yeah, but as George Bush once said, we don't negotiate with terrorists. You can't let the terrorists win. And I think if you capitulate to that, it's very naive, because there's a lot of DeSantis derangement syndrome. There's a lot of liberals I talk to who talk about DeSantis as if he's like in their house and around there oppressing gays. And if DeSantis wins, gays will be in concentration camps, just like Trump would. And it'll be illegal to say the word gay.
Yeah. And I'm thinking my politics are left libertarian, some sort of left libertarian anarchist thing, somewhere over there. And if it weren't for that goddamn thing he said about killing drug dealers judicially, he said that, remember that, like a year ago?
Yeah.
If it weren't for that, I'd probably vote for the goddamn guy. Mm-hmm. Although I still hate the immigration stuff, even though he makes good points about it. But then on foreign policy, which is the most important thing, as we said, this thing, his position on Ukraine, what he said in that CNN town hall thing, was so perfect. It just, the likes of which I've never seen a presidential candidate say. Even in some ways, Ron Paul wasn't that bold. He just flew right in the face of the establishment with that. They said exactly what you're not supposed to say. The neocons who run from foreign policy, like Vicki Nuland, lost her shit when she saw Donald Trump say that about Ukraine. That was exactly the wrong thing to say. That's awesome. And I think it is part of, and I got to say this, I've always noticed this in Trump, and I've always felt it, actually. I've intuited it about him. He is instinctually anti-war. Like, that actually is his instinct, is anti-war. And I've never seen that in a politician. Ron Paul is certainly intellectually anti-war and politically anti-war. I never necessarily felt like an aversion, a visceral aversion to war from Paul, maybe. But with Trump, I actually really do. Like, you can just sort of feel him cringe just thinking about it. And he's been very consistent in that. Like, he really avoided conflict except with ISIS, which, listen, and here I am defending this. I'm not really, but I am understanding it, like why Trump did this. Remember ISIS 5 years ago, everybody?
Yeah.
Like, what we thought of ISIS, what ISIS was up to? They had captured 2 cities in Syria and Iraq, or 3. It captured cities, major cities. They controlled the cities and controlled those populations, right? And held power there. And that's what Trump did. He drove them out. Actually, Obama started it.
Well, there's a wing of there's part of the right wing, the Henry Kissinger, Pat Buchanan type, that if we go to war, we have to be effective with it. We have to be quick and effective and total about it. We have a very specific mission, and we're going to win the war.
That's the Weinberger doctrine, the Caspar Weinberger, the Reagan. It's really the Reagan doctrine,
which is much better than the neocon and even Obama strategy of expanding the wars limiting what soldiers can do during the wars. So there's no actual fighting happening. They're just an occupying force that are supposed to be there perpetually, the nation building, which, this Trump's faction of the right has no interest in.
Yep. Perfect point. Exactly right. Yeah. A lot of people on our side, on the anti-war side, they conflate all the bad people. Like everybody's a neocon now.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody who's pro-war is neocon. It's like just not true. There are multiple factions in the pro-war, the generally pro-war side of things.
Mm-hmm.
There's the realists like Kissinger. There's the neocons who want to colonize the world, basically. And then there's the Reagan doctrine people. Caspar Weinberger, Colin Powell was also part of this, developing the doctrine, and Reagan himself, which was, you go in hard, you go in fast, and you leave as fast as you can. You don't leave troops behind. You don't leave bases. You don't try to colonize a place at all. You just go punish your enemies and move along. Now that's not stupid. That's, if I'm forced to choose a foreign policy for a country I live in, that would be the one.
Yeah,
I would choose.
And again,
we'd have to fight about, whether it actually is necessary to go to a particular war. But, if we are convinced that there is a threat over there, then I want the Reagan people.
Yeah,
for sure.
And it's about, again, a big step in your political life, and everybody's political life, is confronting the question, and even in your personal life, would I rather be right or be effective? And
or would I rather be right or alive?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, if there's an actual threat, like, and I can't leave and I can't escape, I'm joining the army, like, even at my advanced age, because there's no other choice. Of course you do that. Even as a lifelong anti-war person, like, I'm not a pacifist at all. Like, I am down to fight if it's necessary. It's just that it's just never been necessary, not even close to it. But the Reagan doctrine is different than neoconservatism. Robbie Martin on Twitter, like, just can't get this through his thick head. This is Abby Martin's brother. They now run this media company together. They do some good work. Robbie was on my show. He just insists, and he's always fighting me about this, that they're all neocons. Everything's neocon. Every bad policy, foreign policy, is neocon stuff. I've told him there's colonialists. That's what the neocons are. They want to take over and control the whole world. They want bases in every country. They want puppet governments in every country, right? You saw what they did or tried to do in Iraq. They want to do that in every country. That's a big deal. That's a whole very developed ideology, world plan, military strategy. It's a massive thing, right? It's unique. It's its own thing. It belongs with, the British Empire and the Spanish Empire and the fucking Romans. It's that kind of ambition, right? And then there's like Michael's saying, the sort of the Reaganite types, who are not interested in controlling other people like that, actually. They're sort of interested in controlling Americans, but they're not interested in the rest of the world in that way. They just want the world to be safe for us physically and for trade.
Mm-hmm.
And they primarily want to trade, and that's pretty damn good. But if you present an actual threat, now, of course, Reagan always inflated the threats. He never really needed to go to war with anyone, I don't think. But if you're right about the threat, then we got to go hard and fast and then leave.
Yep.
Exactly. So,
so one last thing before we go about the Ukraine war. Apparently, Russia is continuing their strategy, their genius Sun Tzu art of war strategy, to fight a war by destroying their own infrastructure. So the Kakhovka Dam.
And their own defenses.
Yeah. So the Kakhovka Dam exploded. Both sides are blaming each other for this. This is a dam that supplied water and energy to much of Crimea. And apparently Russia is, once again, just like they did with their own pipeline, destroying their own infrastructure.
See, do you understand that, like, this demonization of Putin campaign, that is why the media says Putin did it. Because if they hadn't conducted this 20-year PSYOP operation to convince all Americans that Putin is the devil, people would look at him like they're crazy, because that's the only way you could believe that story, right? Well, that's the only reason that Russia would blow up its own dam, destroying its own military equipment and emplacements, is that their leader is the evil.
Yeah, if you have the conversation right now with people who believe that Russia did this, and you ask, hey, what's your evidence? Well, they say, oh, well, Putin is evil. He's an agent of chaos. This is the exact chaotic thing in his playbook that he always does. Is he just loves creating mayhem and chaos because he's
right.
Evil.
Like, he's just a sadist. Yeah, he's the Joker.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. I mean, even Hitler wasn't like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no one's like that.
Yeah,
I mean, it's certainly not world leaders of major countries for decades. He's been the head of a major country for decades. He's not going to be a wild man. He can't be a wild man like that.
Many people throughout history have done awful things to their own population and their own country, but they had very well thought out rationales and ideologies behind them. There was a there. Like, there's a reason why Hitler went into Russia, even though it was the worst thing you could do. So, yeah, this makes absolutely no sense that Putin just gets off on murdering people.
Right.
And, yeah.
Sorry about this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting dinged from the head of the Icarus Fest. We gotta go.
Yep. No Zoom meeting tonight. Instead, we're gonna meet in person with all of our friends.
Right.
At the Icarus Festival.
Go to IcarusFest.com and join us in Rutherford. Beautiful Rutherford. I love it here. I'd love to live here. I realize, but yeah, it's awesome. All right, guys. Thank you, everyone. Chat, Michael, fantastic. This was great. See you across the street.
See you across the street, man.